Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the North South podcast. And today we're going to be looking at psychological preparation for Jiu-Jitsu, which is probably the lowest hanging fruit in terms of there's some really easy things that you can introduce and probably the area where people assume it's the most useless as well, which is a bit strange. I think I personally attribute it to Dana has been pretty negative about sports psychology on a few occasions. But yeah, anyway, we'll get into that. I'm Dave Allenson, and this is Andrew.
Hello.
Yeah, right. Before we get into it then, how's your week been?
It's not been too bad, mate. I think I should preface this for anybody who actually does, part of the few listeners or viewers that we do have. Again, like every episode, it's very cold in the north of England, and if you're watching this, if you have the displeasure of looking at mine and Dave's faces, if you can see my breath, I do apologise. It's fucking freezing. But yeah, so we're just committed to the cause. We've done this podcast when it's 30 degrees. We've done it when it's 0 degrees. We're just committed
everything
to
in between.
Yeah.
Also, if you're watching this, I apologise for the moustache that you're having to look at. It gets to go next week.
He's got a porn star
moustache. Growing it for November.
Should put your link in the thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that. Yeah, my daughter, she's 2.5, and she's very upset at the idea of me shaving it off.
Really?
Whereas my son is like, yeah, get rid of that. My wife is like, just fucking, it needs to be gone. But my little girl, I went to like trim it the other day, and she was like, oh, Daddy! Fucking hell, all right. So yeah, she's going to be gutted.
To be fair, I've had to have a bit of a shave because it's get cold and it's big jacket weather. Having a long beard just rubs on your jacket constantly.
I can't grow a beard, so
mine's not great either. But it needed doing, so it is what it is. But yeah, enough about facial hair.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we've recorded one of these, and it's actually our second attempt to record this one because we ended up just talking for 2 hours on Monday.
Yeah,
podcast uncut where we talk shit about everyone. That'll be for the if anyone wants the Patreon, that's where we'll start a Patreon where you can hear us just fucking talk shit on everyone.
Yeah, just slag everything off. But yeah, you have to pay for that one. We can't do that one for free.
Definitely.
But yeah, so sports psychology. I think again, like everything when we talk about these things, a lot of the information we're going to talk about has come from sports psychologists. What we're going to hope to try and do, obviously, from our point of view, is provide you, the listener, with a bit of a framework that you can go away and apply. And obviously, we'll ramble on some topics about our points of view as well. But we should say that there is some fantastic sports psychologists in the sport. One of the main ones, especially if you're in the UK. I don't know how much work he does privately, but both myself and Dave have used him for clients. Is a guy called Adam Nichols. Adam I think he's the head lecturer of sports psychology at the University of Hull. I'm pretty sure I've got his credentials there. He's obviously a doctor, PhD in sports psychology at the University of Hull. I don't know if he's a head lecturer. He is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think he's a purple belt, and he is very good with his time. He's got books. I've got his book somewhere knocking about. My house is covered.
I haven't got his books. But I can confirm he's a clever sausage.
Yeah, so I'd recommend, if you're a coach, I recommend having a conversation with him. Like I said, if you are an athlete, again, I don't know how much private work he does, so I can't.
He does do private work, but
I don't
know how busy he is. Or he has consulted in the past. He's able to, but I don't know how much he takes on. But he's willing to...
Just a funny. I've just looked at my phone. I've just got a text. I'll give him a shout out. So a friend of the podcast, Mike, has just sent me a text saying, "Do you believe we directly and indirectly perceive when we're grappling?" Fucking hell, Mike. Now's not the time, pal. But yes. But anyway, so yeah. So like I said, or if you don't want to go to him directly, as I said, myself and Dave have both used him as an external source. We've got like webinars with him. I think Dave's got a booklet that he's just
produced the psychology training manual for us.
There you go.
I've made a lovely front cover. That is the entire basis of my contribution.
So what we're trying to say is, fucking go and speak to him. He's a very clever bloke, very good at his job. He posts quite a lot of blog articles, I think, on like LinkedIn and stuff like this that are probably worth looking at. So if you want more expertise than the shite that me and Dave are going to ramble on for about an hour, please go and fucking speak to him. Obviously, there are other resources out there, but he's obviously the primary one that comes from. And I must give a shout out to
Shout out LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Oh, mate, what a fucking experience.
Andrew fucking dared me. My wife did point out that this was not a dare, but said to me, go on LinkedIn for about half an hour and look up your old school friends.
It's fucking unbelievable.
Fuck me. It is eye-opening.
It's
A
unbelievable.
personal favourite was when a friend moved job and just moved to a different company. And the top comment was, good luck on your next mission. I was like, it's a fucking job, mate, not a mission. You're not going to Mars. It's fine.
I think the exact quote I said, I text Dave and I said, if you want to learn how ludicrous our jobs are, go on LinkedIn. I was like, it's fucking unbelievable. It's so funny. That's a recommendation for the podcast. If you are a person, I hopefully, to be fair, people who listen to this might be a bit LinkedIn warriors because they probably have proper jobs. But if you don't,
so I got mine when I was a teacher, and I kind of want to update it to be like, I teach grown-up PE in my garage. Just see what the reaction is from anyone who knows.
It's fucking brilliant. It is
probably
the best 30 minutes of your life. It's so funny. I found out even something funnier. Apparently, people can see when you viewed their profile, which makes it even better.
Amazing. Fucking hell.
It's so much better. But anyway, yeah, we're diverging.
Yeah, it's like
sports psychology.
That character in Peep Show, the boss who just talks in all of the like boss platitude. That's what it felt like.
It's so good.
It's well worth it. Anyway, yes,
sports psychology. Obviously, sports psychology is a big. I think it's definitely something that is a more modern emergence in sport preparation. I think it's probably, if you looked at even professional sports that have been in place for quite a long period of time, it's definitely a new emergence of whether it's having a sports psychologist at a club, athletes using sports psychologists through different profiles, whatever it is. Obviously, you've got the massive emergence of mental health in sport as well, which plays a massive factor. Obviously, big profile athletes are making a bigger attempt at speaking out about their mental health. Like Simone Biles was a big one at the Olympics, wasn't she, when she pulled out? But there's probably been other examples.
In rugby union as well, you've had quite a few.
Like Joe Marler was a big profile one, wasn't he? And so obviously, like the psychology of sport is becoming ever more prevalent. The impact the mind has, obviously, we know from like the emergence of ecological dynamics, the impact that the brain and that sort of stuff has on sport and development. So it's not going anywhere. But it's definitely something here to stay.
Kind of the irony of it being that actually psychology within sports has always existed. It's not a new thing. It's not that athletes didn't used to do this stuff. It's that so I'm going to put my historian's hat on for a minute here.
Oh, wow.
Some of it is as we've moved away from having religion be a big part of our life in the Western world, and for all the benefits that has, and for all of the awful shit that has happened in both churches in the UK and around the world, I'm not discrediting any of that. But I do think that because there is this crossover between psychological, sort of semi-spiritual, there were aspects of what sports psychology now does within professional sport that was probably partly dealt with religion and religious belief that people just don't have anymore. And I think as the fact that within society we have replaced it with nothing means that these things have become more important within our society and our culture for individuals, because we've realized that God is dead, but we haven't put anything else in its place to help people cope with the reality of living and competing and all of those things.
There definitely is a lot of, like, that's a really good point you've made. I was a bit worried then when you started talking about religion, Dave, got to admit. But there is definitely a lot of themes when it comes to psychology and religious beliefs. There's obviously like the ideas of like relinquishing control.
Yep. Let Jesus take the wheel.
Jesus take the wheel. The outcome is already given, for want of a better word. Like, we have
but it's all part of God's plan. Sorry, I'm just translating for anyone who happens to be religious or was raised Catholic like me.
Yeah. So there are quite a lot of common themes. Obviously, we're not going to fucking go into the complexity of religious.
Not after last time.
No, not after last time. But like, we're not going to cross that barrier. But like, there are, like, I think it's a really good point that Dave made. As people, especially in the Western world, become a little bit less tied in to religious beliefs, the void of control, potential control that is left, obviously needs to be filled in some spectrum. And I think that's an important topic to make, is that the spectrum of psychology often gets, me and Dave were talking about the podcast, and we were saying, like, when I did like my degree and all that sort of stuff, and Dave like has come through coaching, like your interest in psychology at the beginning isn't, you tend to get drawn to these kind of jobs because of the interest in anatomy and physiology, and there's a very like black and white answer to things. And psychology is very misty. It's all a lot of it depends, and there's a lot of like, well, it could be, and all this sort of stuff. So it's hard to get
quite culture specific as well.
Yeah, it's hard to get that attraction to it, as I know I have for sure. Like, and Dave was saying as well, is as you get further into your coaching career, you realise the importance of psychological factors can have. And that spectrum of psychological factors is pretty wide. Everyone tends to look at sports psychology as like singing Kumbaya and fucking breath work and all that
this
sort of
is
shit.
the answer.
Yeah, but it's such a wide spectrum of practice in terms of how you prepare for a performance, and it ranges from the stuff that you do in the gym every day all the way up to like how do you manage anxiety on a competition format, and hopefully that's what we're going to talk about today, and give you some more insight.
Just quickly, I think it is worth putting this in the context of everything that's been going on in the last week or so with several high-profile people within combat sports and jiu-jitsu as well, kind of shitting on ecological dynamics, shitting on these sorts of approaches. The history of, say, Danaher, who's often been quite negative about the concept of sports psychology, whilst ironically actually promoting one of the key foundational things that we're going to come to later, which is fucking preparation, is a key constituent part of actually feeling psychologically ready. It's worth noting that we have to remember we are in a bubble. Jiu-jitsu is not as big as skateboarding. And you tell people that and they go, wait, what? Like, I remember Matt Benyon on the Raspberry 8 podcast saying, like, I know the numbers. It's not close. We are nowhere near as big as skateboarding.
I'm pretty sure flow cheerleading is bigger than flow grappling.
Exactly. And so
now, that might have changed over the last couple of years, but it was at one point bigger.
It means that we have to take into account that sometimes people's what seem very well-informed opinions on this aren't, because the sport is very young and the sport is very small and very martial arts oriented. So it has failed to learn a lot of the lessons that other sports have learned already, because they are bigger, because there is money involved, because there are TV deals, because of all of these things that mean suddenly no one gives a shit unless you're winning. And no one cares what stones they need to overturn to actually win more.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's a really good point, and like it's something that I'm massive on myself, because I'm a sport purist. Like, I've always loved sport across the board, but because you can learn so much from other sports. Like, I'm at the minute listening to I was telling you about it on Tuesday, but there's in the NRL there's a team called the Penrith Panthers, and they're like a legacy team. They've just won the Premiership back-to-back 4 times. Virtually impossible in a modern salary cap era. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. Producing some of the best players in the world. And their coach, a guy called Ivan Clear, in his book, and I'm listening to it, and it's fucking gold, mate. Like, it's coaching gold, some of the shit in it. And it's just like, go and watch other sports. I urge people to get out of this like combat sport mentality of like, they're all soft, like the combat sports, we're well hard, like, just get like.
Is
go
that
and
why
watch
people are fearful when someone comes from rugby league and turns up?
It must just go and watch it. Go and watch football. Go and watch rugby. Go and listen to coaches. Listen to like resources. There's books. There's podcasts. Even just watching behind the scenes stuff. Like again, like use Penrith as an example. Every year that they've won a championship, they've released like a behind the scenes YouTube series. Just go and watch stuff like that, and you can learn so much about how elite performers. I'm not talking about like. I'm not discrediting jiu-jitsu and grappling performers, but I'm talking about like to be a professional footballer, that is literally 0.0001%. It's the most played game on earth.
Yeah.
You have to be so fucking good at it to get to a top level. There's got to be something you can learn from that. Again, I'm not saying you have to be a football fanatic, but
like if we were to say, this is pulling it out of my arse, but the jiu-jitsu equivalent would be, you'd have to be like Gordon Ryan or Andre Galvao to get in contention for playing for a team.
Yeah.
It's when people go, oh, Ronaldo, he's quite similar to Gordon. You're like, no,
he's not.
No, it's not even.
No,
close.
He's not.
That guy's so much better at his sport by comparison. And it's not to discredit Gordon. It's just that there are more people within the sport that are.
Like you go and it's something that I really recommend people do. There's and you can learn so much from it. Like so much from just how these top performers behave, how they act, how they approach preparation, their mindset around competing and training and preparing. And there's there's so many studies. And again, we're not saying that to be ridiculous, because the majority of people that listen to this will be normal people who are trying to find a little bit of a benefit they can apply into their training and their competing. But it's always that trickle-down effect, because you always find a comparative means. We're not saying you need to get up at 2 a.m. and go and run around the mat and do all that shit. But there's so many, especially psychological things, that you can apply in your everyday life that top performers will use, but they'll just apply themselves with a bit of intent. And it can be really, really beneficial. And the thing with jiu-jitsu, especially jiu-jitsu, is the barrier of entry is so low because nobody's doing it. So if you start doing some of this stuff and you start applying yourself with it, the gains that you'll make in comparison will be significant.
Yeah, it'll be night and day difference. I was saying to Andrew just before we started the podcast that one of the things that he really instilled in me was have an intention.
And while you're training.
It's made a huge difference. Like I train twice a week, and one of them's an open mat. And every time I go to the open mat, I'm like, what am I trying to do today? Because it's changed the way that I approach everything. And that alone is a huge one. It's just have an intention on certain days of the week.
And that's just a psychological factor.
But that's also just how low the barrier for entry is.
Yeah,
if you turn up at just even like a grassroots rugby team that's playing at a decent level, everyone there has an intention like, oh, the line out's not good enough. I need to get better at this. I need to practice my line out throws. I need to practice jumping. They know what it is that they need to work on, or they get told by the coach, like, you did this shit on Saturday. This is what we're going to focus on. Or we struggled with this as a team. Someone is evaluating it in a way that's very difficult to do in an era of player managers. It's why every other fucking sport doesn't have coaches that also play, because it doesn't work. So as a result, we have to do that for ourselves, because that's not there for us.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's not easy. It isn't. It's not. Chances are you've probably got a lot of shit going on in your life. Do you know what I mean? Work, family, kids, dogs, whatever it is, mortgage to pay, all that shit. Like, it's hard. It's not easy. It's why it can help having someone walk you through it. But it's all like one of the things for me. One of the big things I always have with coaching is when I take a client and it's like, again, this is slightly off topic, but it sort of falls back into place. Is like the communication to this is everything. So like, sometimes when people sign up with me, they're like, I think they almost expect a rigid structure to begin with. And I always say, I'm not going to give you anything. Obviously, there is rigid structures, like all the programming and all that sort of shit. But like, I can't advise you on things that I don't know aren't happening. So if I said to you, we're going to do this, 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 and this, it might not mean anything to you. It has to be a communication. It has to be a collaboration on this. Like, the most value you're going to get is from me relaying information to you based on things that are off your context.
Yeah.
Like, if I said to Dave, right, Dave, this week you're going to go and do fucking this, this, and this, and Dave's like, hang on a minute, I only train 2 days a week, and you give me 4 days a week. Like, what we're getting out of it? So there's got to be like, and that's where it's hard by yourself, because you have to communicate with yourself, and you have to go, right, what's good here? Am I sticking to what I'm trying to do? Am I actually applying myself? All this different stuff. But that's
where this structure comes into use. I think
it gives you some framework to do. So we should probably go on the first one, because this is probably the longest winded one. So it's 4 points. Dave's 4 points. Again, these 4
They're
points.
Not mine. Adam Nichols is 4 points.
Adam Nichols 4 points. And the first one is preparation. So now, obviously, there's a deep context to what preparation could mean. Do you want to start, Dave? You can go first.
Yeah, go on. So it's even better than that. It's alliteration. It's preparation for peak performance. I'm disappointed he didn't put preparation for peak psychological performance. That would have amused me even more. Or physical performance.
The 4 Ps.
The 5 Ps. Peak psychological / physical. Anyway.
But there is the 4 Ps of proper preparation, 5 Ps. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. 6 Ps. Yeah. 6 Ps, sorry, fucking hell.
So, sorry, yeah. So I was just thinking of stupid jokes that I'm not going to say. The key here is essentially that the whole booklet that Adam has produced for us is a process. So you're meant to revisit it and go back to it. And the first thing is talking you through what is preparation. And the simplest example, because it will mean different things too, or because of your context. Like, for example, Andrew's client, Shane Curtis, is going to have a very, very different context to, say, my client, Deck, who is a teacher who trains as often as he can. They're not going to have the same kind of approach to performance. So what it says here is pick a competition you did badly in and think about what's poor physical preparation, what's poor mental preparation, like what happens as a result of these things. So you're almost thinking worst case scenario so that you can then work out, right, well, what's the opposite of that then? Because it's going to mean what might be like solid for one person might actually not be very helpful for the other, because they're past that point of that thing being useful. So here we go. Essentially, it's about having things to do and think about in the run up to competition. So it starts with the day before competition. Well, it doesn't start with the day before competition, because you initially begin with what is poor performance and what do I actually want from the training this week and what am I going to do. So it gets you already thinking about the aims and intentions for your training outside of competition. But then it also gives you something the day before competition. So you have things to think about, such as what do you want to happen? How are you going to make that happen? How will you play to your strengths? How will you cover up your weaknesses? So that you're actually considering, like, instead of it just being, oh, I hope this happens, it's, I'm going to make this happen by doing X, or I'm going to limit this from happening by doing X. Now, you can't control how good your opponent is, and maybe you won't do that as well as you think that you will, but you're focusing on things within your control rather than it becoming something very external. We did our whole podcast, didn't we, on controlling the controllables.
Yeah.
So there's a heavy emphasis on that within there. And then there is also the competition day preparation. So I'll let you talk about this one a little bit more, because you'd found something from someone else that was even more in depth.
Yeah, so
than this.
this was a really, and something that you just quickly wanted to touch on that you mentioned is, like, I think this term preparation, like Dave's obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about preparing for the day itself, but the integration of more psychological tools, or using more psychological tools to benefit performance, is exactly what Dave said. It's like using a process in a training room that allows you to build performance week to week, day to day, that's going to enable a better result on the day. That's what we're trying to do. It's layered in through the training process. It's not just like, I'll just do none of this week to week and then I'm going to turn up on the day, I'm going to do some planning and that's my job done. It's something that you have to work on, you have to apply, and you have to use it in a training setting. And like Dave said, the process starts at home, for want of another dodgy cliche, but like, it is, how much do you apply this? Now, obviously, there are, like Dave said, there are spectrums or ranges that you can apply this. If somebody is a full-time professional competitor, it's probably going to be a bit more rigid and set in place than somebody who is a dad of 3 just training twice a week. Like, there's going to be a bit of a fucking variance. You know what I mean? Like if we use Shane as the example, Shane will have a very key set of things that he's got to go in and work on a training day. Whereas Dave might just be like, I'm just going to try not get stuck on my back today. That's like your intention. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it sounds simple, but that's what, when we say the barrier of entry is so low,
Yeah.
that's what we mean.
So we've talked about before, most people turn up, do whatever jiu-jitsu daddy tells them to do, and then spar and go home.
Yeah.
And so as a result, like, just implementing some of this will give you so much more than the majority of other people there. And it's also, if you talk to the guys who are very good in your gym, by and large, you might have to tease it out of them, but this will be what they are doing, whether they realize it or not.
Whether they know
have
or not.
an intention. They have things they're specifically working on. They have things that they, whether it's they like to watch instructionals or just watch footage or whatever, that informs, oh, I want to do this week. Oh, I had some of it's pettiness. They have a role, someone exploits something and they realize they've got a massive weakness, and then they go, right, well, for the next 6 weeks, I'm working on that and that alone. It's, all of this already exists. It's just that sometimes people aren't very good at explaining that they do it, or that this should be a focus for things. And I think those people are also often the ones who are so negative about the concept of sports psychology, because they do it already without realizing it. And so you tell them these things and they go, oh, yeah, obviously. And you have to kind of sit them down and go, yeah, everyone else doesn't do that.
Yeah. But anyway, so back to the point. So,
Yeah,
let's say we're preparing for the day, and I must apologise. This framework, I can't remember the lady's name, and I need to check what her name is.
Here.
I must apologise for that. But it was so good. I thought I'm having that. So essentially, this is obviously there's a couple of benefits to this. Obviously, the preparation side in terms of mentally preparing for what the day is going to bring. But obviously, especially if you're somebody who is a bit anxious, a bit nervous, it can be really helpful to just write down what's going to happen. To just look at the date, so there's nothing that's not prepared for. You're almost over preparing in a way. Like some people might not enjoy this much level of depth. If like for me, like I always like to be comfortable. I like to know what's going to happen. So it's like having a bit of a structure. You just go, okay, that's what I need to do. I know what I'm going to go and do, my tasks for that period of time, and I'm going to go and just do what I need to do. I know where I need to be at, what it is. So essentially, it's 5 stages. So it starts from the minute you get up in the morning, and it finishes as you're walking onto the mat, basically. It's a 5-step plan. So again, stage 1 is like getting up. Is your breakfast prepared? What are you going to have for breakfast? Have you eaten that before? You know it doesn't give you the shits, that sort of stuff. Are you going to have a shower? Are you going to have a stretch? What's that morning routine look like without sounding too Huberman? Stage 2 is the journey to the venue. So it's like, do you have to catch a train? Do you have to drive your car? Are you getting a lift off somebody? How long's the journey going to take? Do you know where you're going? Like, have you checked the map, the route the morning of, like to make sure there's no traffic, there's no delays, there's not been any accidents? You know, there's parking nearby, so like you know where you're going from that perspective. Stage 3 is arriving at the venue, so you know you're gonna have to make weight. Is your weight good? You know you have to sign forms, things like that. Like that bit is pretty similar across the board. Stage 4 is like find your place in the venue, like where you're going to sit. Do you know where the bogs are? Do you know where the vending machines are? Are you in anybody's way? So if you're not always going to have to be fucking moving out of the way out of people all the time. The next stage is the bullpen. So how are you going to warm up? How are you going to feel mentally in the bullpen? What are you telling yourself? What sort of warm-up are you going to do? Is your warm-up prepared that you can do it in a fucking 1x1 square? It's not like a massive, extensive warm-up that you need a whole room to do. Have you got your kit ready? That should have been one that I should have said at the start. And then the last one is just like your mat side. You're ready to go. Arousal's kicking in. You're thinking about what you're going to do, what you're going to try and do, which is a sort of the next step in this. In terms of the framework, but it's just like that you just planning. You just know what you're doing, when you need to do it, and how you're going to feel at that moment in time. And what you're trying to do is remove guesswork. So there's no, you're not having to like be like, fucking hell, I need to be here, I need to be there. You're like, you get to the venue, you're like, right, I'm on mat 5 at 2:30. There's my bullpen. The bogs are over there. There's a big queue for them bogs, but I know there's some ones upstairs that are a bit quieter. There's a vending machine there if I need water. That's the help desk. I'm good to go. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm set and I'm comfortable. And it's again, it is a bit. It sounds a bit strict and a bit rigid, but it's so much easier when things go wrong to adjust when you've got a level of understanding.
Yeah, because it's if you don't know what something is. In that environment and in those circumstances, especially if you're new to competition, you will go from naught to fucking panic attack out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because if you, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I happened to be wearing like a Fitbit on a day where I competed, and I watched what my average heart rate was throughout the day. I enjoyed myself. I'd had a lovely time. And I look back on it, and my heart was fucking hammering all day until I
used to. So like back when before Whoop was the annoying fucking fit trend it was now, it is now. So I used the original Whoop, and I remember thinking like coming back from comps, I'm like, why am I so fucked here? I've only done like 3 matches, and I'd like look at the data, and it was like my heart rate was at like 120 for the full day, and it was just like you've got so much underlying psychological stress or allostatic load, to use a posh terminology.
Even if you're enjoying it, that's the key
even if you're
bit.
enjoying it, yeah. It's the definition of fight or flight, isn't it? Is your body is under stress, and we're not going too much into that, but like
it's ready.
It's ready to go. It knows something's going to happen. Especially you might have slept like shit. At the first comp I ever did, I got about 2 hours kip. Like, and you don't feel great. You're nervous as fuck. Like, and it's especially like, and then you add another layer of complexity if you're somebody like going to another country to compete.
Yeah.
Like, you want to have an element of like I sort of know what's going to happen here. Obviously, obviously abroad is going to be a bit different thing, but like there's a difference between sub-only fights and tournaments.
Yeah.
The days are completely different experience. Like we used to have it because obviously I've done Grapplefest quite a few times now. We had quite a simple structure set in place for Grapplefest. So it was like eat your breakfast. You used to have to be there about 1 o'clock to weigh in. So you'd check your weigh-ins. As soon as the weigh-ins were done, you'd fuck off. So we'd go straight and get like a burrito bowl or something. So you're getting some rice and some shit in because you don't want to eat too close to the show. And it's like, right, you get back, then you chill out, try not to get too aroused watching all the other matches. And then it's like the structure's set in place. So you know what to expect each day. So then if you've got to make weight or whatever, I mean, I never had to do that because I always went for upper weight, but like, you're so much more prepared mentally, and then all you have to worry about is performing because everything's planned out. And if something goes wrong, it's very easy to divert back. If the weigh-in's overrun, you go, well, it's all right because I've got time. I don't have to worry about that. Like I've got everything set in place. And again, I'm a bit of an over preparer. I think I inherited that off my mother, who's a bit neurotic about timing and shit. But like, it sometimes you see guys at comps and you're just like, how the fuck how are you managing this? I'd be an absolute, no wonder you're nervous. You fucking forgot your pants. You've turned up 10 minutes before your match starts.
Yeah.
It's like, no wonder you can't fucking no wonder you're gassed out because you just,
It never makes sense to me. Like people go, oh, I'm packing my bag on the morning. Like it was instilled from rugby. Like you pack bag the night before.
2 pairs of kit, two pairs.
Where's my gum shield? How the fuck do you not know where your gum shield is?
Like, and obviously we all make mistakes. Like, I forgot my pants. I have forgot my pants before. That's why I use that example.
Amazing.
But it's just having that, like, you just putting yourself, you're giving yourself room to perform, aren't you? Like it's the basic shit. As like, if you've already got to deal with this much stress, like X amount of stress, don't give yourself Y amount of stress. Just keep it at X. Like, remove as much of the other distractions as you possibly can. And then obviously you can employ a bit of personality to it. Do you like to listen to music? What kind of music do you like? Do you like to run around? Do you like to sit still? That's the part that becomes individualism.
But also, what I like about it was you come back again to that evaluation process after a competition, and you look at, well, what worked, what didn't work, so I sometimes tell my clients, I haven't competed a lot. I haven't competed anywhere near as much as you, but I realize now, talking to some guys, that I've competed more than quite a lot of them, because quite a lot of the guys around here haven't competed lots and lots. They don't necessarily always realize that, and it took me a while to accept this, that competition was part of the process of working out what your system for competition is. Because even having come from rugby, even having had all of that kind of understanding of, I need a process, I need a thing that makes me feel comfortable, you still have to work out what it is for you as an individual on your own when you've got no teammates to bounce off, when you are about to step on the mats, when I was very lucky. My first ever competition, I did quite well because I had no expectations, because I'd just been promoted before I signed up. So I was immediately doing a fucking blue belt competition. I was like, well, I'm fucked. And that allowed me the freedom to just enjoy it, and slowly realize that if I don't enjoy it, I don't perform.
Yeah,
I have to have enjoyment.
It is such an interesting thing, because I obviously use, and you'll have the same thing, but obviously I've competed quite a fair amount, obviously not as much as others, but like a decent amount, a lot more than the average probably have. Well, definitely a lot more than the average have. But like, it always made me interested, like the difference between rugby and jiu-jitsu. So like when I first started competing, I actually got disqualified, DQ'd in my first ever jiu-jitsu competition, which is a funny story. I'd come from rugby, which was like bang your headphones in, crank the metal, like it's you throw all the cliches about it's about going to war, it's about putting your body on the line. You're getting ready to get fucking physically filled in, basically. Like it mentally, you're in a position of, it probably is very similar to like getting in a fight, really. It's just like you're going to 80 minutes of just trying to kill each other. But when I did that for jiu-jitsu, I was so aroused that I just lost all. Like with rugby, you can afford to not think as much, because it is just run the line, whack him as hard as you can. Like, you don't have to use your brain too much. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, there's obviously a huge component of being aware of what is fucking happening. Obviously, there is in rugby as well, but it's a different kind of perception.
Yeah. Definitely. I did the exact same thing, my second ever competition. Like, fucking banging my head against the wall,
Yeah,
behind
just
me,
trying to
like,
get.
oh yeah, and just got beaten up by a very
Yeah,
nice Marine from Liverpool twice, and then went
yeah,
home because there were only 2 people in our division. I was like, cool,
yeah,
double silver for
yeah,
being a fucking idiot. But that was a really useful lesson, because you have to find, like, what is your line and where are things helpful or not. Whereas I know other people who've done similar and they go, well, I'm not competing again. And you're like,
yeah,
it's a process. It's not.
yeah. You've
I
got.
appreciate now it's harder because they're more expensive than they
Yeah,
used to be, the competitions. But
and the more you do it as well is the more. So like Connor, who's one of my clients, when he first started jiu-jitsu, he was like, "What advice would you give to yourself?" I said, just go and compete as much as you can.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what he did was he bought a lifetime membership of Grappling Industries, and I think there was a point where he'd done like 102 matches in a year.
nice.
Mental
Yeah,
amount.
that's awesome.
But the problem he had was he got so comfortable that he stopped caring.
Yeah,
So like it's such a fine balance.
yeah.
And I had this as well. Like in my
You need
last,
something higher stakes.
in my, so the year before I injured my back, I said to myself, I was like, look, I'm probably not going to get many more years at brown belt. I've ended up doing another like 2.5, but I was like, I'm probably not going to get much more time at brown belt. I wanted to do Nogi Euros as like a last sort of hurrah. I was like, I'm just going to try and get as many matches as I can. I think I did about 40, I think, something like that. And what I learned was I was saying yes to things that I didn't give a flying fuck about.
Yeah.
I couldn't give a shit. And I underperformed on so many occasions. The year started quite well because I had some big things. So I had like a Grapple Fest, I did like I did 2 AJPs, one in Barca, one in Budapest. So like big, sort of decent standard of competition. I was quite excited. Performed okay, didn't perform to my best, but did okay. And as I got through the year, I was just doing more and more shit just to get matches in, and was getting worse and worse and worse as performances went on. And there is definitely a fine balance to it. You have to compete to get the information, but I always say to guys, you have to care about it as well. It has to mean something to you, because if it doesn't mean something to you, like I always struggled. If I'd won something, I always struggled to get re-motivated to do it, because it was like I ticked it. I didn't give it. Let's say I won a BJJ 24/7 or an Empire. I really struggled to then be like, I'm going to do another one, because I'd already completed the goal of like, I want to, like, my goal when I started competing was, the only thing I cared about was like, I don't want to be the best. I'm not asked about being the best. I'm never going to be the best. I want to win once at every belt level just to prove that I've done it. So at every adult belt level, I've won a tournament. So people my weight, my age, my rank, like it was the only way I could mentally, because I conceptualize being worthy of a belt. I know there's many psychological things that are wrong with that goal, but that was how I looked at it at the beginning. And obviously I overachieved in my expectations, but that was always my goal, but then it came hard, because it was like, once I ticked it off, I couldn't be arsed doing the same thing again, which meant I did quite a lot of different variety of tournaments, which was always good. But that was always my problem. I was like, once I'd achieved something, I was like, I don't really give a shit about doing it again. It just doesn't motivate me the same. That's where it becomes about finding a way for you. Some guys can just compete, and all they care about is winning, and that's the motivating factor.
They're petty enough.
Yeah, they're petty enough that it doesn't matter who's in front of them, what tournament it is, they want to win it. Whereas for others, it's going to be a different story, and the story that you tell yourself is really, really important. The whys that you do it, again, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's really important. Define your why. Why is it you want to do this thing? Why do you want to compete? Why do you want to win that medal? Are you trying to justify it to yourself? Are you trying to prove something to somebody else? Are you trying to, whatever the reason is, figure that out, and that'll give you so much more of an insight from a psychological perspective, and it'll help motivate you, help make you make decisions. Like for me, it was like, right, I have to care about it. So if I don't care about it, I'm just never going to fucking do it anymore, because it's a waste of my time, waste of my money, waste of my psychological energy. Have I done it before? No. Right, fantastic. Let's go and do it. It was like double gold. So I'd never won a double gold. That was a big thing. Not a big thing, but it was something that I wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
It was one of the few things that I've actually never managed to achieve. I've had double silver, which is frustrating, but never double gold.
I got double silver when I lost to that same person twice.
Yeah, default double silver.
And my coach put it up next to a world champion Muay Thai medal so that everyone would ask me about it.
But it's the nuances of finding your competition motivation everyone's going to be different. And this sort of leads on to the next point, which is like goal setting, which is the second point in the framework, which is goal setting. Now, the 3 points that both Adam, I think, because Dave mentioned it before, and what I use within my coaching is you have like an outcome goal, performance goal, and a process goal. Hold on, Dave. So an outcome goal, generally speaking, is I want to win. Why else are you going to competition? You want to win the fucking tournament, you want to win the match, whatever it is. I'd always recommend people don't put too much emphasis on the actual medal, because you actually have fuck all control of the outcome. So it's more of a something that you want to happen rather than something that's guaranteed to happen.
But you can also accept if it doesn't.
Yeah, all you can do is go out and do
the
your
nature
best.
of the sport.
Yeah,
2 are
it
going
is,
to
of
go
course.
in. One of you's going to win. One of you's going to win.
Yeah. If 2 teams go to a Champions League final, one's going on with the trophy, one's not. Like that's sport. It's winners and losers. Unfortunately, it's the name of the game. But obviously, I want to win is a fantastic motivator. It's enough to get you out of bed in the morning. If you don't have that, then you're probably going to struggle from the start. And the way I always like to look at it is the further down you get from the spectrum, the more control you have. So outcome goal, we've got very little control over. Performance goal, we have a little bit of control, but again, it's still very dependent on the day. And then the process goal is the thing that you as an individual can control the most within your training environment and your competing environment, which is sort of where all this stuff fits in, essentially, that we're talking about. What are your thoughts, Dave?
Sorry, I just vividly remembered another time where I lost really badly. But you were talking about, so for example, you were talking about performance goals. Like I did the show your role clash years ago, which was like when Guy was still considered cool. And I went into it thinking, I'm going to do all right here. Like I'm decent. I'm bigger than some of the guys because it was like over 80 kilos. Like this will be fine. Turned out the third highest ranked blue belt in Europe turned up, flying armbarred me in under 30 seconds. And the best bit of it is my friend Josh was watching, and you hear him on the video. But this video is lost. I'm so disappointed. But you hear him just go, "Oh God, no!" And then then I tap, and it's recognizing that there is an element of chaos to all of this. I think sometimes people we have this obsession with the outliers, where people who are mentally not okay are incredibly high level performers.
Yeah.
Jordan, or Michael Jordan and people like that. You objectively take a step back and go, that's not fucking normal, mate.
Oh yeah, they're not well people.
How do you live like that?
Yeah.
And it's remembering that you have to accept that there is an element of chaos that is outside of your control. And so a performance goal is a fantastic thing to have, and you should have it, and you can influence it, but you may not actually get that thing that you want. All you can do is stack things in your favor as much as possible. Like you might wake up on the day and you've got the shits. You can't do anything about that. You might look over the mat and suddenly someone's decided. There was one a while ago where Owen Jones just entered like an empire. Yeah, an empire, and you could see everyone went, "Fuck! Why has he come to this?" And it's just you can't control those aspects. You can just do the best with what you've got on the day in front of you. And I think that's where we're talking about. You obviously pick them as goals, but you have to also understand that no matter how much you might want to succeed at those goals, they are not totally within your control, and that's just the nature of reality. It's not negative thinking. It's not, oh, you're being a hater. It's not any of this shit. It's just, let's be fucking pragmatic here. I can set myself the goal of, I don't know, I want to win 30 gold medals this year. I can't fucking control that.
Yeah.
That is totally outside of my control because the ref might decide otherwise in some of the matches. I can do enough matches that I might statistically be able to do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I cannot guarantee I will get that. Like I might break my leg in the first comp. That's me out for however many months. So it's accepting that element of chaos within the system, I think, is really important.
No, I agree.
And then, the third one. So there was the performance goals, and then what was the simplest one?
Process goals was the last one.
Process goals, and they're within your control.
Yeah, very much so. And these are the things that, again, this is the process. Essentially, is the roundabout term for everything that we're talking about, and that includes the physical, that includes the psychological, that includes the skill work. The process of performance is it's not. It's so easy to look at. Like again, we use like a trifecta in training it with coaching. So like a viewpoint of like you've got psychological, you've got the skill development, and then you've got the physical development. They work in a trifecta because you improve one, the others two show benefit. It's not just like one or the other. It's something that you have to put time and effort into everything. And if you fail to address one thing, you've got a gap in the armor. Essentially, there's a potential that it could come crashing down. Obviously, for some people, can get a long way without addressing two of them. Like it's not doesn't exactly work like that, but like it's
but
worth
you will
thinking
get found out if you
at some
continue to
point,
try and perform at higher and higher levels.
Yeah, you have.
It's like we've talked about before. The kind of classic problem for a lot of British grapplers is they go over to America and go, "Fuck! Everyone here is strong. Everyone here is conditioned. Everyone here has played sports since they were 14." Like there's at the competitor level anyway. There's a gap that if you're not prepared for it, it can be much bigger than people recognise that it is.
Yeah, for sure. And again, this idea of the process goals, that's things like a really good example is like you're setting your training schedule. So what days are you going to adhere to? Are you going to train 3 days a week? Are you going to train 4 days a week? Like, be realistic with your process. Like, how are you, like we talked about at the start, have you got intentions for your sessions? What session's going to improve your capacity to do jiu-jitsu? And what session's going to improve your integration with a task within jiu-jitsu or grappling? Like, are you going for performance? So is it like, I'm not going to get scored on today? What's your intention for each session? What does each week bring in terms of moving the needle forwards for you as a grappler? But also, how are you addressing that? So, like, how are you ranking yourself? How are you gathering information that's going to allow you to improve? So, again, another really simple thing that we do is you'll score yourself. So it's like you score yourself. You potentially can score yourself on your effort, your competitiveness, your posture, your attitude in training, like things like that are really simple, and you can just score them on a 1 to 10. So like you go into, let's say you have an open map of a comp set, you know, like our gym's a Thursday night. So let's say it's a Thursday night. You go in. My goal tonight is, I don't know, score as many points as I possibly can, whatever. I'm choosing an arbitrary thing based on competition. And it's like, right, at the end of the session, how did I do? How was my effort? Well, my effort was, I give it an 8 out of 10. That was pretty good. How was my attitude? Well, my attitude was okay. It was probably a 6. Why was it a 6? I got a bit deflated when I drew around, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's something as simple as that. Like, I think something that an individual can do that is so simple and is can be such a valuable tool is keep a training logbook. Like, literally just get a fucking shitty like notepad and like after training just write what went well, what went badly, why did it go badly, what could I do about it next time. And you've just got an information gathering source. Like, you can look at it as an individual round itself. Like, you could have rolled with someone who's at an equal level to you, and you were like, "Oh, I did this wasn't that great. I need to put a bit more effort into here. Like, I'm going to spend a bit more time trying to control my mount better, whatever it is." Or you can look at it from a global spectrum. I was tired tonight. I wasn't motivated tonight. I didn't drink enough water today. There's something going on at home that's distracting me and I'm not as motivated. You can go into as much depth, I think, as you need to. Obviously, with us here, it's very hard for us to give you a specific recommendation because it will be more about you. But, like, I think that barrier to just get a fucking notepad when you finish training, when you go home and you're having your tea, just write notes, 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's also that thing that they're talking about, guys who are very petty or their brains are wired a certain way. That's what they do. Like, I have a friend, well, it's Josh, who we've talked about before. He naturally does all of that in his head. He can't not. That's just how his head works. I wouldn't want to fucking live there. He was joking about making me live there today. But he does all of that. And that's how he improves at the rate that he does. And other people are like, well, he's just really good. It's like, no, he fucking isn't. He's a human being like anyone else. He's exactly the same. Stop turning other people into these like pedestals. And recognize that it's just a series of actions completed over a longer period of time. Yes, there are also aspects of that are inherent and that you might have to do more work on to be able to do that. But it's perfectly possible for you to take aspects of what that person does and apply them for yourself.
Well, I was just about to say that somebody being better than you is not an excuse not to do something.
Yeah, exactly. It's we talked about this earlier. It's a coping mechanism. Who cares if they're better than you? Like, so fucking what? They should. It's the childish ego in me that's like, well, they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And
And
I
obviously,
appreciate that not everyone's wired that way.
having a bit of that niggle is a really good thing. Like having a bit of like, oh, it's pissed me off that he's fucking passed my guard or whatever. Like that's a good thing. But don't just downplay everything else just because somebody's better than you.
Yeah, no, think about what it is that happened. So for me, like I had a really bad round with one of my training partners a little while ago, and I realized that I was making a massive tactical error that was making it very one-sided, and that was my fault. And as soon as I addressed that, suddenly it was better. But I could have just gone, "Oh, they're better than me."
Yeah, and the idea with this
nothing.
is these things can take time. Like skill is a non-linear process, so it's like sometimes you might notice something and you can get a fix overnight. Like you next time you go into training, you've dealt with it, you can deal with it. Do you know what I mean? Like but there are certain people, if they're better than you at something, it might take you fucking months to deal with that shit. Like months to come up with a problem. And you're just going to have to go head first and try different ways and try different stuff and try and organise it and try and think about it in a different way to get to a solution to the problem. But if you're not dealing with it, you're never going to get there. So you have to find a way, a process that allows you to make small steps progressing forwards.
And you have to go on.
No, I was just saying, more than likely, one day you wake up and I've got a client online, and he's just a normal purple belt. He's competed a little bit, but he's not that bothered. And he checked in this week, and he was just like, "I've just suddenly had the realization that I think I shared it on my story actually that I can handle people now." And like for weeks, I've just been saying he's been doing the right thing every day. Every day, plans his training. He's got his intention. He reflects on it really well. Like the check-ins I send him are like fucking 30 minutes long because he provides that much information to go through. And it's like he suddenly got to a point where he's like, "Hang on a minute, I'm fucking doing all right here." Like, but you have to come through it. You have to work and work and work at it, and it's every week you chip away. I always say like, performance isn't made out of 10 out of 10 weeks. It's made in 7 out of 10 weeks. It's not going to be perfect. You're just going to have to find a way of chipping away, but you have to find a way of gathering some information in order to chip away at.
Yeah. But also it shouldn't be. I think people assume that high performers just stack great week on great week.
Yeah.
Well, if they do, then they're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Because it means that it's not hard enough. You should be at a 7 out of 10 because, like we've talked about before, there has to be enough challenge that it makes you want to get better, but there also has to be enough success that you continue to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that, and that's where this can become quite useful. So just something that I wanted to mention with the goal setting is these goals have to be sensible. You can't just take a goal of, I'm going to be no-gi world champion in a year. Right, okay, well, unless you're already on the podium, that's probably not going to fucking happen.
Yeah,
so
they
have to be...
I always, when you're like 35 and they're like, just started training, like, I want to be a world champion, you're like, fuck me, I don't know how to break his heart here. Like, it's probably
maybe
like... It's
IBJJF Masters?
There's you've got to have a bit of realisation. Like, it always makes me laugh when you see, to be fair, Mike, I sent you the clip where Mike Israel was on the Simple Man podcast or whatever it's called, the Better Man or whatever it is. And it was just like, Michael Jordan says, all you got to do is work harder. And he's like, yeah, cheers, Mike. I'm 5'4" and can barely fucking jump in the air. Like, I don't think I'm going to win an NBA anytime soon. Like, there's got to be you've got to have a bit of sense of realism. Like, it's not to, we're not trying to diminish anyone's dreams or goals, but like, let's I wanted to be a rugby player, but I'm 5'8" and fucking 84 kilos. Like, it's not a feasible challenge. Like, unfortunately for that one, I'm gonna have to go back and try and pick a different dad. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there are certain things that you just have to be realistic. But that's not being negative. That's just having acceptance of a situation.
Yeah.
And a good enough ability
outside of your control.
Yeah, a good enough self-awareness to go, okay, this is what I want to do. Now, that doesn't mean you can't achieve above and beyond what you think you can. Again, one of it is very clear. I am a bit of a negative Nelly, but I genuinely believe people can do extraordinary things. But when you're setting your goals, you've got to be able to look around your room and go, right, well, all my training partners are 35, with 3 kids and train twice a week. Is this the best environment to be a world champion in?
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
So like, have I played any competitive sport? No. Am I tapping black belts at white belt? No. Right. Okay. Let's just look at where I'm at. Let's not start in the future. Let's just start where we're at. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry, I went on a tangent then.
No. But I think that's important because you get guys who are like, oh, I want to be the next Nicky Rod. Like, okay, well, when you turned up on day one, were you, like you said, tapping black belts? No, then you're not going to be fucking Nicky Rod.
Yeah,
it is that straightforward. Like, you can be much, much better and you can compete at a standard that you really enjoy, but you also have to just see where that takes you because not everyone can be the best. Otherwise, there would be no value in being.
Don't overthink it.
So the other thing that I would say is you have to revisit these goals. They need to have a time limit on them. Whether that's monthly, whether that's like if you play a sport where it's a season, you might do it as a season, but you have to come back and look at them again and decide like, what did I do well? What did I not? Will I continue with any of those goals? Will I get rid of some of those goals? And that allows you to turn it into a process instead of just, I've got this goal and it's there and I'm going to do this forever, and then you lose sight of it and you get bored
because
and you don't come back to it.
The thing with jiu-jitsu as well is it changes. It's a long, without sounding again too cliche, it's a very long quote-unquote journey. Like, what you're like at the start of your jiu-jitsu journey, career, will be completely different. Like, I always talk to my mates about this. Like, so when we were like blue belts and purple belts, we were training 6 days a week, twice a day, like, getting after it. And we often talk about it, and I'm like, yeah, but if you look back now, back then we were all single, we were barely employed, like, we had nothing else to do. Whereas now it's like everyone's got girlfriends, misses, houses, dogs, like, self-employed, they've got their own businesses. They change, so your goals change. Like, I could go to an open mat and train with another brown belt, and he's looking to be competitive. He's always going to have an extra 10% more than me because I don't give a shit and I'm operating pretty much on one leg because I've got a duff leg. So it's like you can't use the same measuring stick as when you started versus when you went throughout your process. And that's one of the hardest things for people to come to terms with, is that it'll change and your circumstances will change and your view of the game will change. Like, and that's why you've got to be able to, like Dave said, adjust these on a basis of like time and some people can do 15 years of just wanting to compete, pushing the boundary. Other people, you might get 5 years in, you're like, do you know what, my priorities are shifting? I'm not really enjoying that much. I don't have as much time to commit to it. I can still apply this process to still make sure I'm getting better and improving on my jiu-jitsu, but my focus now is no longer to be a competitor. It's just to be the best person I can be, or the best grappler that I can be.
Yeah.
And like Dave said, it's good to have some measurable outcome. If you're a competitor, having a point in the year can be a really simple thing. So, like, a really important comp to you. So, like, let's say, like, it used to be easy back in the day because there was only like 3 big comps a year. So, like, obviously the UK one in the gi was like Euros in January, December. But like, you could pick something like that. So, let's say you're an avid no gi competitor, it might be like, hopefully, if you're at that level, an ADCC trial. So if you're like a good national standard, that could be like, right, that's my thing. Everything else is going to be built around that moment. Or it could be like a gi Euros, or you could take a trip to America and do gi Worlds, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it just, every year it'll give you a focus point and a boundary to work towards. Now, obviously, if you're not a competitor or looking to push that level as much, you just have to find something else that works quite well. It might be a smaller comp. It might be
a local,
I don't know. It might be a local one. It could be as simple as, it could be something as simple as like, I want to do X amount of sessions in a year. It could be something as simple as that. Do you know what I mean? Like a volume distributor. It could be like, I want to make sure that I average 3 sessions a week. So what's that? 3 sessions a week, 52 weeks of the year is what, 156 sessions a year. That's your goal. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I've never seen anyone use that, but I'm just using that as an example.
No, but you could.
You could use that as a simple effort measurer, and it's time, it's quantifiable. You can measure it. Like, why did you fail? Well, I got injured. Okay, well, that's out of your control. There's not a lot you could do. Was there anything you could have done? Well, I could have managed my stress a bit better. I could have done a bit more strength training, whatever it is.
But you can also revisit that sooner, because if you realise that approach is not working, then you pivot. because sometimes people get caught up in, it's like when people do steps challenges or distance challenges or things like that for walking or running or whatever. They realize that they fucking hate that process. And there's nothing wrong with stepping back from it and going, oh, I picked a shit goal. I actually need to change this.
Of course.
You have to work with how you're wired. And part of this process is about finding out about how you are wired and what goals do light a spark and what goals don't. Because something I think you can do with bad goal setting is you can suck the fun and life and joy out of the things that you're supposed to be doing, even if you're a professional, which is a very, very small group of people, but you're still supposed to be doing this because you enjoy it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have picked it as your fucking profession.
It's not like you're getting paid fucking a lot of money, is it? So, like, it's not like, you know, like you see footballers that clearly hate playing football, but they're getting paid 200 grand a week, so you sort of understand why they're still chipping up every week. In grappling, all you're doing is taking physical fucking damage. You're not really actually... obviously, there is some financial subsidies, but, like, for the majority of people, there's not a lot. So, like, you have to enjoy it. So, like you said, it's that ever-ending goalpost. And if I always say this to people, is like people look at grappling like it's almost like people approach the weekly process of grappling like there's an end point. It's like this is supposed to be something that you're going to do for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
So that, of course, it's going to change. Of course, your priorities are going to shift. Things are going to change. So why not just view it as an endless thing and stop putting so much pressure on the small weeks? Like, guys are like, I can't have a rest week. And it's like, why? If you did this for 20 years, like, it's like, I always say this, if
never come back.
Yeah. So, like, my mum's a big runner. She's always been an avid runner for years. If she takes a week off running, nobody goes, fucking hell, Joanne's had a week off running.
Yeah.
But if you have a week off grappling, everyone goes, what's happened? Like, why have you stopped training? Blah, blah. It's like, just fucking relax a little bit. Just like, it's going to be a long time. It's going to be like a minimum of 10 years just to get your black belt. So, like, just chill.
Yeah. It's where that advice of trusting the process, and you see some guys saying, like, just keep showing up is probably the key constituent. And to a certain extent it is. Obviously, we're talking about how do you keep turning up and continuing to improve, because we all know those people who keep turning up and they haven't got any better in about 6 years.
It's one of the biggest lies in the industry is that you just turn up and it's not osmosis. You don't just get better through osmosis.
But I also agree that there is an aspect of the experience, the fundamental that just comes
truth.
With time.
Yeah, there is a fundamental truth to you have to just keep turning up. There's no way around that.
We've got two last things, because I'm just mindful that we've got 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, we are 10 minutes. Fucking hell.
The next one up was performance profiling. I think we've sort of covered this already. This is where you rate yourself on different aspects, and it can be as broad or as specific as you want it to be. So you can start with, like, what Adam wrote for us was one that's quite general. So it's kind of, what are the physical capabilities that you need? What are the technical capabilities you need? What's the tactical knowledge that you need? And what's the sort of psychological qualities that would be useful for you? And that's nice because you can kind of adapt that to your game. And there's certain aspects that I think are just meaningless. Like, they're useful for other sports, but in grappling, we've talked about this before. Oh, I want to be super fucking explosive. Well, great. You picked the wrong sport.
Yeah.
It's not the differentiator that you think it is.
No.
Now, can you squeeze the fuck out of someone for ages? Great, you're in the right sport. So it's bearing in mind that what you put there is going to be specific to you as an individual, and what you put there is going to be specific to the sport that you actually do. You can't just take someone else's list here and apply it.
No, it's strengths and weaknesses in it relative to you.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking for. It's a bit of a self-assessment, really, at the end of the day. And again, I think you could tie this quite well into your goal setting as well. Is like, let's say, for example, like we did use the example of, like, you pick a comp at some point in the year and that's your end goal. After that, you can have like a performance review. So you could be like, what did I do well? What did I do badly? What do I need to improve on? It's like, well, I struggled in this area of the game, whether it, like a certain aspect, whether it's wrestling, leg locks, whatever it is. Certain with this area of the game, I could have been a bit more physically dominant in the positions. Maybe I felt a bit like I was, I don't know, I felt like I couldn't relax and get into the match. So you've got three things. You've got a technical component, you've got a physical component, and you've got a psychological component. Three things that you can then explore and look to address in your next X period of time. Obviously, we're talking like a year here, but like in theory, it could be any period of time that you want to use. But it's just, again, all of this comes back to making decisions. And again, everyone thinks of psychological purely to do with the mind, but a lot of it is just you're putting things in place that allow you the freedom to explore and develop. That's a lot of the psychological aspect of performance. It's giving you that freedom and that allowance to manage the things that you can manage and forget about the other things that you can't. And
I think also, sorry, that you just sparked something off there, but the psychological, the profiling aspect of it, I think, is really important because, one, it means that you're taking responsibility for your training, which is something that we've talked about extensively. And if you take responsibility for it, you give a shit, and therefore your outcomes will just naturally improve. But there's also the fact that I firmly believe that subconsciously you're aware of a lot of this information. Like, you can't be so stupid that you've just got no concept of what you're good at or not. But consciously or logically, we're very good at justifying away why we don't do the things that we don't want to do. It's going to be uncomfortable. If you've got a very, very good guard, learning to wrestle is going to suck if you're not very good at it. In the same way that being a very accomplished wrestler and then you come to the groundwork or the guard play, you're going to suck. And you might not like the fact that there's this huge disparity. And with this profiling, there's no hiding from, shit, I'm an 8 out of 10 at that and I'm a 2 out of 10 at that.
Yeah.
Okay, I do need to focus on this now. You subconsciously already knew that, but it could be having quite a negative impact on you and how you approach grappling and how you feel about yourself as a grappler, because you're worried, like, what if they find out that I'm not good at this bit?
It's quite interesting. One of the, if anyone's done any reading on like sort of like psychological behavioural stuff, like whether it's CBT or ACT, one of the key components is acceptance of a situation.
Yeah.
So being able to accept a situation, and essentially this is what it is. You're just accepting to yourself that
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Like, you have to. There's a certain freedom that comes from being able to front up to yourself and not just be in denial.
Yeah.
And again, but all it is putting that back in your control. So it's like that's essentially what it is. We're coming back to controllables again, but like obviously there are other factors. If nobody's looked into ACT specifically, I'd recommend it. It's quite an interesting thing. Acceptance of a situation is such a big factor. Like, again, another thing that comes with like high performers, and you see it in high performing organisations, is acceptance of the situation. What we're good at, what we're bad at. That's why they always have performance reviews. And again, you don't have to be so self-critical where you're like, oh, I'm shit at this and I'm shit at that, and like it's just having a very objective review of like, do you know what, I could be better here.
Yeah.
I could be better here. And I mean, there's elements of skill acquisition in terms of like introducing novel stimulus that are going to help you make massive improvements if you want to look at it that way. But like, it's just being realistic with yourself and just having a conversation with yourself. Like, I could do better. That's a big thing. Is like just being able to go, I could do better at this situation.
But I think as well, some people who are probably naturally quite good at this sort of thing are the ones who are excited to learn more about the sport and do the things that they enjoy. It's something that you can do to try and reframe it, is like, oh shit, there's an opportunity for me to learn a load of new stuff that I didn't know was part of the, like, that's how I try and see anywhere where I don't have a lot of something. I'm like, cool, I can go and learn about butterfly guard because I'm not very good at that. That's a whole game I didn't know existed. I'd love to learn more about inverting. My neck says otherwise, but that would be another path of like, oh, I can go and play with another aspect of the game, rather than seeing it as shit at this is it.
I always remember thinking like, but again, that is another part of psychology that probably gets undervalued, is just how you look at things. Like, I remember when I first started training, I was carrying a meniscus tear from rugby, and I remember training and thinking, oh, I can't wait to learn jiu-jitsu when my other leg works. Like, I remember just thinking, like, this is going to be fucking mint. Like, when I can use my left leg. If I can do this on one leg, imagine what I can do with both legs. And, like, it is just that. And it's tough. That's, I think, the big thing with a lot of this stuff is everyone looks at physical training as something that you have to apply effort to and you have to practice it and you have to get better at it. It's the same with the psychological stuff. You have to practice. You can't just hide away from it because it's hard. You have to. And for some people, it can come with some really tough conversations. Like, it can come with some really tough self-realizations.
Or because it seems quite boring.
Oh,
I
because
think
it's
that's
boring.
another
Yeah,
one. Like
yeah,
this
it is.
isn't
Yeah,
it isn't necessarily very sexy, but actually it can make such a huge difference. It's silly to see that for
yeah,
what
it
it
is.
is.
Like
Right,
if
sorry,
you
we
no,
need to
yeah, we
mention
do
the
need to
last
last
one.
one.
We've got 3 minutes and then you've got to
Yeah,
go. So the last one was mental imagery. And to be honest, we're probably least qualified to talk
I
about
was
any
going
of
to say
this.
this is the one where you probably need somebody who's qualified to do with it.
But the reason that you want to practice it and the reason that you want a framework for it is because you don't as I understand it, your central nervous system, like we all have, is pretty fucking stupid. In terms of it doesn't need to be particularly clever. It doesn't really differentiate between the reality of a situation and you imagining a situation very well. It's why people struggle with anxiety or rumination or reliving the past. It can very much put you back there again.
Stress is stress. This is the concept of stress is stress.
Exactly.
A really good book I recommend to everyone about this, and I always get laughed at when I say it in front of people, is if you want to learn more about the impact of psychological stress and allostatic load, it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Yes.
Really, really interesting. Really interesting about how the elevation of stress and perceived stress and central nervous system activation can impact our physiological outputs.
Yeah. And then essentially the other side of that is that if you can imagine it very well, it's essentially like you've experienced it before. So that can mean that when you go there to do the real thing, it's no longer overwhelming because you've done it.
And you can
so
actually
you don't have a huge reaction to the
and you can also get performance enhancing benefits because you've lived, for want of another word, lived that experience.
Yeah, it's not new to you.
It's much easier to control and to regulate how you go about performing. But again, it's one of them things where this is probably where you need to speak to somebody who's qualified to put you through it. It's very easy to do it wrong badly. In terms of like create negative thoughts.
Yes,
you don't visualize the wrong things.
You don't want to fall into visualizing it all go wrong because that's where.
So it's probably that's why we saved it to last, because we can't really talk about it very much. But yeah, so hopefully that's provided you with some frameworks. Again, to repeat it, if you've made it all the way to the end, any of these questions, I'd highly recommend you speak to Adam. Even if you just message him and be like, mate, can I pay for an hour of your time and have a conversation with him? And again, like I said, I don't know what extent his private work is, but it's worth doing. Coaches, I would highly recommend buying his book and reading his book. It's all about the psychology of sports coaching. I don't know, that actually might be the title. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have researched that. Apologies, Adam. But it's I think people like this could be a real value in jiu-jitsu and in coaching and helping people. Like, even if it's just, again, the importance of mental health and in the modern era is pretty extensive. We all know that the troubles that mental health can cause, especially in men, but in women as well. It's something that's worth getting in touch with, not just from a performance standpoint, but from simply a living your life standpoint. It's so much easier to manage your life and the everyday stresses of the world if you've got a better connection with what your brain's doing and the way it's making you think and the way you approach certain stuff. So yeah, it's something that I'd highly recommend people insight. And I know that's a bit deep for the end of a podcast, but we're not normally this
but I think
serious
that's
about things.
Like one of the foundations of performance is going to be sound mental health.
Yeah, psychological welfare.
Exactly. And I think it's a responsibility, especially if you have high performers, but just in general, is a responsibility to have. Because the other risk is that people get interested in all of this and then it all becomes a bit culty and a bit, here's my answer to all of this. And I think we need to be very clear that that's not what we're trying to say. It's not a fucking men's health movement or a women's health movement. It's, here are things that people use with high performers who have a lot on the line and have even more probably than 30 or 40 years ago, thanks to social media. And these are the things that they use to navigate all of that. And therefore, you can use the same approaches and just tailor them to your circumstances.
Of course.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Andrew. I thought that was a really good one to talk about.
We've actually done a good job there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Normally we talk some shite, but I feel that went well.
Yeah. Yeah, we sounded clever. That's what we want. As always, you can find us on Instagram. I might reply to you, I might not. I'm not using it very much at the moment. You can message us on YouTube. I think people can leave questions and stuff on Spotify. I don't know how any of that works. And then they'll also be in the bio or the show notes or whatever the fuck they're called on whatever platform they are, a link to donate for this disgusting
for
moustache.
November.
You can see it because that's also why I was doing this. Is this kind of seems appropriate to kind of do this in November actually to talk about some of this stuff because.
Yeah, we didn't actually think about it. It is important, isn't it? I think it's something that, as I'm getting older and people are taking on more life stress, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And obviously, you're in gyms where you're interacting with large groups of people, and you see the load that it takes on people, especially in the modern world, where if it's either a money thing or you're worried Russia are going to drop a fucking nuke on your head, or like there's all sorts of shit in terms of the impact of, like I said, that allostatic load, that posh term for chronic stress.
Yeah,
is impacting people, and it's obviously jiu-jitsu is a platform for people to escape that sort of shit. So it's easy to get bogged down in, like Dave said before, it's about enjoying yourself and getting the most out of it and being able to look back. And I think a big thing as well for a lot of people with jiu-jitsu, for me, is like you want to.
Hey, I was wondering when he was going to make an appearance.
He's just woken up. I think that's a big thing, and it is a bit deep to end the podcast, but it is really, really important for people to understand that, and it should be about enjoying it, and it should be about having a good time with your mates, and go to a gym where you're fucking happy to be there, and it's a comfortable environment, and like to get the most out of the sport. It is a fantastic, for the most part, fantastic culture full of some fantastic people who are very open with their time and very generous, and there are some cunts like there is in everything, but like it's for the most part it's full of very, very good people. And I always employ people, like, especially when new guys come to the gym, I like, go out and experience the world. Competition especially is a fantastic way to meet people. For the first 7 years of training, I didn't get on an airplane that didn't involve going to jiu-jitsu tournament, which says a lot about me, really. But yeah, like it's a fantastic way to do things and to see the world and to meet new people. So if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, I'd never met Dave. Currently do a podcast, so like it's important to we talk about all this performance shit, but it sounds deep and it sounds a bit technical, but like it is just about you getting better at the thing that you enjoy and the thing that you want to do better at.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll leave it there.
Cool. Right. Thank you, mate. As always.
Enjoy the rest of your day, mate. An absolute
You
pleasure.
too.
Take it easy.
See ya.